What's up, Doug?
Hey, Dennis, how's it going?
Another live stream. Um,
Another day.
another day, another happy Sunday.
Amen.
So, um, one of the things I wanted to start out with, did you see the Will Smith slap thing?
I did.
What'd you think? Did you think it was fake or real?
I think it's real. There was a lot of people that are very surprised by it. I must admit that his speech that tied into it later on um, was very well done and tied in with so well. You've got to wonder, but everyone else's reaction seemed like real. But I guess they're all actors, right? So who knows?
Yeah, that's the thing. You know, I think at first when I looked at it, I thought that it had to be fake. And it's funny because I posted it out on the community tab on YouTube, and a lot of people thought it was fake. And interestingly enough, a lot of people said, "Who cares?"
That's about my reaction, honestly.
But you don't have
Like, who cares?
who cares about that? But I thought, as time went on, as the days had passed or the hours had passed, I started thinking about it more. And then I started seeing other people's reactions related to it, and I thought, well, I think it's kind of important because, um, for two reasons. Number one, if let's just say it was fake. The fact that somebody like Will Smith can go up on a stage and assault somebody for a comment that he made, and quite honestly, I didn't think it was that big of a deal, um, kind of opened up a lot of, I guess, encouragement for violent behavior in the future for people who think that, well, Will Smith did it because, you know, he's a big movie star. If he can do it, then if I'm sitting in a comedy club or whatever, um, then I can go up there and just, whack somebody in the head. And a lot of comedians had a lot to say about it too. They said, this is unacceptable. Now, they already had to worry about the fact that somebody might rush the stage on them, but now they really have to worry about it. And it also kind of shows you the disconnect between, people like Will Smith and the ultra wealthy and the rest of everybody else. Because let's just say you and I were at a show let's just say somebody invited you to the Oscars and somebody said something bad about you or your family and you just ran the stage. What would happen to you? I
I'd be
mean,
in jail for a
you'd be in
very,
jail.
very long
Right.
time.
I mean, and
If I looked at them wrong, I'd probably be in jail for a long time.
yeah. So I just thought, I don't know, man. And then if it's real, for the same reasoning, it encourages people to go and rush the stage and do all these things. And um,
Yeah, it's definitely not the right reaction, whether it's real or fake. It's not the right reaction. On the same note, like I understand why he'd be hurt. His wife has been through some pretty significant and serious battles. She was out in public to support him, and that was not the time or the place. Like I'd be really hurt if that happened to my wife. But obviously, walking out and slapping someone—that's just not the answer. That's not the way you solve the problem.
no,
But it wasn't. I don't think it was a good thing for Chris Rock to do. I think it was, kind of a below the belt shot from a comedian standpoint. But
you mean Will Smith hitting Chris Rock?
no, I mean choosing to say something about someone's
Oh,
wife who's in the
yeah,
audience.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I got
someone
you.
who's in the audience. They're in the audience. They're out there and taking a shot at them for something that obviously she didn't have a lot of control over. I mean, that's
Yeah,
kind of a low blow.
yeah,
It's not to the same level of physical violence,
right.
you know.
Well, I thought too, if it was an act, I didn't really, some people thought that, well, maybe because of the Oscars and the plummeting ratings, as they ended up doing something like that in order to, try and get people to watch. And
I'm sure it improved the ratings.
it certainly made me go. As soon as I saw it on Twitter, I ran right to the, TV and turned it on. Otherwise, I never would have paid any attention to it. I don't know if it's going to have any bearing later on next year. I probably won't, but I also thought then if it was fake, I didn't really think as much that it was related to the Oscars itself, but um, every article that I read after the fact mentioned Will Smith as quote unquote the King Richard actor.
And he's been in a lot of things. It's pretty crazy to attribute one particular role to him.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of thought if it was staged, that it wasn't about the Oscars, it was more of trying to promote the movie about the Williams sisters. And I could totally understand why they would do that because I'm a tennis player. I played tennis my whole life. The last movie I would ever go see is that movie, because I have no interest in it. And as a tennis player, I would have no interest in it. And I can't imagine anyone outside of tennis having any interest in watching that movie either. That's just my opinion. But I thought it was interesting that a lot of media outlets decided to use the King Richard actor, quote unquote, in all their articles. And I thought, maybe it was staged to get more attention, related to the movie. But there's been a lot of ramifications after the fact. What's happened? Smith resigned from. I think he resigned from the Academy or something. He resigned from something related to the Academy. People in the chat could probably let us know, but it looks as if other projects have been put on pause with him because of it. I haven't heard of any sponsors letting him go. And again, if that, typically other people, if it was an athlete or something like that,
Yeah. Or you have to support something conservative, and then everyone can blacklist you immediately. No questions asked.
Yeah. But
a lot of the news. One thing that I noticed, and of course, the work that we did from Election Integrity, is that how much of the media narrative is really just a copy and paste, where someone comes up with an article, usually the Associated Press, but not always the Associated Press, and then everyone else literally just takes that article and modifies it slightly so it's not plagiarism and runs with the same basic story. So it's not too terribly surprising to me that he'd be referred to the same exact way in all of them, because most of media, there's absolutely zero creativity. There's almost zero thought. And it's really just about copying what's out there.
That's a good
actually
point.
One of the things we ran into, which was really fascinating to me, is that out in Arizona, there is a small limited publication. I guess you call it a newspaper, but really it was, a liberal think tank that had 4 staff writers with limited, like I said, limited distribution. But what would happen is they'd research and dive into things and paint conservatives in the most negative light possible. And then they'd publish all these nasty articles about them. And then everyone else had their article to copy, to go off of, in order to go with the narrative they wanted to. So they helped set the stage in that. And they were funded, privately funded, rather than actually making an income off of the selling of newsworthy stuff. But it was a way to influence what was actually published.
Yeah. One vote, one person said will resign from the Academy. Thanks, one vote. Yeah, it's true. It's that's a really good point. It does seem like a lot of these news outlets are lazy. They all use pretty much the same stuff. There's a video. I don't know if you saw it or not, but there were hundreds of local stations, CBS, ABC, NBC, including Fox. And I didn't realize the ownership. A lot of these companies are owned by, very large media outlets, and it's really kind of irrelevant whether or not they're CBS or Fox or whatever. And they all had the same letter, and they all read it all at the same time. And this guy put together a montage. I don't know if you saw it or not, but it was brilliant.
I haven't seen that one, but I've seen stuff like it where covering local news and you just go from one to the next across the country, and it's literally the same exact verbiage.
Yeah. So, all these people were essentially reading from the exact same, precisely the same letter. And so, he went one by one with each person, and then everybody all at the same time, essentially saying the same thing. It was really, really pretty remarkable. But all right, well, I kind of wanted to, go through that just to start out with with that, and saw a couple of memes. I had to start out with a meme or two, and this one I thought was interesting. Hi, I need a wake up call. They're using using Ukraine to create an energy crisis in the U.S. to push their green agenda, and we'll go over that later on today. But
That's hilarious.
yeah, I thought it was pretty funny. But speaking of that, one of the things I wanted to also mention too is I did a. This is crazy. It's just crazy. It's way over 20,000 votes. This was yesterday. I checked it this morning. It was 19.1 thousand votes. It was funny, the comments, because like, who in the world are the 2%? Who are these? Who are these nitwits?
Obviously, they're not followers of you, Dennis.
No.
Your
I'm like, I
followers
can't
don't
answer
trust the
that.
government. Yeah.
I do not have an answer for you.
That was who we had last time. Was it Thomas Edison? Was it who was
Yes.
commenting last time? That's
Yeah.
Thomas Edison's vote right there. If you're
There
out
it
there,
is.
hey Thomas, good to see you again.
You know what? I think what we're going to do from here on out is we'll refer to those people as Thomas Edisons.
Someone who hasn't followed us for a while, they will have no idea.
Right.
Like, what do you have against historical Thomas Edison? He was a great
You're right.
inventor.
Yeah, it's an inside joke. Inside joke, guys. All right, let me I do want to read a couple here. Jeff Morga. I think Jeff was talking about the rushing to the stage has to be far safer, especially if you may get the crap slapped out of you. Yeah. Oh, before I move on to this, the other thing was apparently the Academy wanted him to leave and asked him to leave, and he refused to. That was a few things that I read. And then there was something else, I think. Well, Chris Rock didn't want to press charges, so nothing happened there. But what I'm kind of surprised at is that here it happened on national television. Why does Chris Rock need to press charges in order for him to get arrested for assault? I mean, I know there's a different level of justice for people like Will Smith and people in Hollywood and the rest of us. But I just thought it was kind of bizarre that he was asked to leave. If that were true and then he refused, that's kind of a different level too. On top of it, I would have been like, you know what, I get it. I should leave. What I did was wrong, but he went up and collected an award, and then did that whole acting thing that he did, and then went out and partied. And there was video of him, just like nothing ever happened. Like nothing ever happened. Crazy.
It is crazy.
But anyway, this kind of blew my mind, because if you were to go on Twitter, this would be you wouldn't see numbers like this. Because
what do you think it would be? 50-50? Do you think
I
it
think
would
it would
get
be
that high?
well, what they show you on Twitter would not be 50-50. It would be 99-1 for on the liberal side. Because some of the people that I follow, and then you see them post something, all of the comments below are slamming that person. Jack Posobiec is a good example of that. I don't know if you know him or not, but
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, so he posts a lot of good. He has a ton of he's got a lot of followers, but he gets a lot of engagement on the stuff that he posts, and he posts quite a bit. And I'll reshare it on YouTube on the community tab. And when I do, it's the engagement on that is pretty high. But you never know it on Twitter, and it's bizarre because you look at something like this, and I'm not saying it just because it's my channel or us doing it, but I tend to believe this way more than I would on the reactions that I see on Twitter from somebody like Jack. And a lot of cases, what you end up having to do is scroll all the way down to the very bottom if you're able to do so, and then click on show more. And then when it shows more, you'll get some people agreeing with them. And don't get me wrong, there's some peppered here and there from the reactions and the regular, when you're scrolling down regularly, but not many at all. So you have to click on show more, and then there's another button another link to put to press for what may be deemed offensive. That's where all the people that are supporting him are. There's nothing offensive about any of the stuff. They just don't want you to don't want you to see it.
It's offensive to have conservative thought.
Yeah. But
It's
I
kind
just
of offensive to who?
well, right. And that's kind of why I saw this one. Actually, I did this one myself. Somebody probably already did it, but yeah, if it's offensive, actually the one I posted was offensive speech and then leftist. And most people were like, well, you should make that free speech. But even offensive speech is still free speech as long as it's not inciting.
You can't have free speech without allowing offensive speech to
Right.
go forth, because offensive speech is just a matter of opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, by all means, you can draw the line, as in, if you're yelling fire in a crowded place and someone gets injured, that's not free speech. But if you draw it anywhere else, as far from opinion standpoint, it's no longer free speech.
Yeah. So, anyway, yeah, I just thought it was crazy because, unfortunately, with a lot of social media out there, you're just not getting. I mean, even if you wanted to be, at least on Twitter, if you wanted to be sort of in a, what do they call it, a echo chamber. That they like to say that everybody's in an echo chamber. You're certainly not an echo chamber in Twitter, and it's really vile. A lot of the things that you see people talk about and say from the left, it's vile, really vile. And then 9 times out of 10, if not higher, the followers that they have, the ones that are making those comments, are they might have a couple hundred followers. If they have more than that, if it's like 1,000 or more, they're following at least 1,000 or more. So it's like kind of like a mutual, like, if I follow you, you'll follow me kind of thing. But anyway, the kind of main thing I wanted to talk about today was it's starting to hit the news a lot more, is Blackrock. You and I were talking about it a little bit. So we're going to get into BlackRock, Disney, the World Economic Forum, all that stuff. And but first, I want to talk about BlackRock, and I want to play. You're familiar with Larry Fink, right? The CEO.
A little bit, not a ton.
So basically, BlackRock and 3 other companies are essentially, they're funds. They're funds that you can invest in. They're funds that, retirement accounts and things like that, where people can put their money in. These funds are, at least with BlackRock, is over $10 trillion in market cap. There's 2 others, Vanguard and State Street. They're pretty close. So they're enormous, really, really big. And
interest in State Street Capital owns Dominion.
oh, really? Okay. Interesting. Well, basically, these 3 companies are so big, they pretty much own everything with a name. So whether it be in the financials, it could be they own Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, they own Coca-Cola, every possible company that that you can name, they own. And then on top of that, there's also a circular kind of relationship where even like JP Morgan will own parts of Goldman Sachs, and Goldman Sachs will own some of JP Morgan. It's just a circular kind of thing. And they're just getting so enormous and so huge. And a lot of people, I think, again, this is my theory, ask the question, well, the people who are controlling everything, who are they? Who is the who people that they're talking about? And to me, I believe it's people like Larry Fink and others that are, running State Street and Vanguard. But I found this video that I wanted to play, and it was an advertisement where kind of like one of those political advertisements from I forget the name of those things, but
Yeah, you know that Rock specifically has also been buying up a lot of private residences across
yes,
the entire
that's
country,
that's
and
exactly
they're
right.
driving up the cost of anything. And what's fascinating about that is when we looked at some of the voter rolls in Arizona, we actually found that a lot of what they call phantom voters were actually tied with corporately owned housing.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. So and it'll be mentioned here in this particular short video that I'm going to show you. So I'll play it real quick.
I'm not hearing any sound. Hey, Dennis, I don't know if that's playing any sound. I couldn't hear
You
anything.
couldn't hear it. Did anybody
No.
else hear that? Just let me know in the chat if you could hear it or not. Anyway, essentially what it was saying is that, and we'll get into the wokeism part of it. Nobody can hear it. Sorry. Um, okay, well that's not good. I'll tell you essentially what it said. It got into where Larry Fink and BlackRock, what you just said earlier, took advantage of the downturn in the housing market and bought up all the homes after the market crashed. And these are some of the people who are part of the World Economic Forum. BlackRock happens to be a member, where they're like, well, you'll own nothing and be happy. And they're essentially right if they're going to buy up all of these homes and not give you, the opportunity to own anything. Because obviously, if you buy property, that is one of the most important things to help you build wealth, is to be able to own property. And the other thing that was said in that video is Larry Fink admires and likes dictatorial governments. Now, we've also heard that from somebody else. The other person that has said that in a video on video is Justin Trudeau,
Trudeau,
where
yeah.
he said that he actually admires dictatorial governments. And the main reason why is because they can control people. And the more people you can control and tell them what to do, the more money you can make.
And BlackRock has an amazing amount of influence. From what I understand, historically, when you when you purchase something from a mutual fund provider, they didn't cast any votes for any of the companies that they they didn't cast any votes for it because there was no way they could represent everybody who had one of their mutual funds. But BlackRock has taken advantage of the fact they're selling all these commodities in order to heavily influence what corporations are doing. And correct me if I'm wrong on that. That's something I read a bit ago.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. And, these BlackRock is not the only company that thinks this. There's a lot of others. And when I was going back to before BlackRock, Disney, State Street, and Vanguard, they all pretty much have this kind of philosophy: is the more people that we control, the more people that we can. In the next video, which I'm not going to play, because obviously there's no sound, and it's a really short one. Here he is in a sitting with one of the guys from CNBC, and what he says is in this is that he said when it comes to behavioral control, we need to be able to force behaviors, and that's a pretty scary thing.
Yeah.
Now, some people may argue that, hey, we're forcing when it comes to forcing behaviors, that's kind of what's happened. That's what you essentially saw in Canada, where you had Trudeau forcing people's behaviors by saying, "Hey, okay, we're gonna go ahead and um, shut your banking down, or we're gonna freeze your assets. We're gonna do all those different things." And that's what these large, enormous, gigantic companies want to do: is control you, control what you're doing. And by doing so, and the lockdowns is one of those great examples, is if we control you and tell you what to do, we're going to end up making more money, because essentially we're going to tell you and show you what you need to buy and where you need to go and all these kinds of different things. So um, anyway, that to me was something that was, watching that video and listening to him say what he was saying was really a kind of a wake up kind of call to me, when it came to the World Economic Forum and all these different things. Because a lot of these companies are essentially saying the same thing, and people that are on the World Economic Forum are saying pretty much the same thing. And that goes into Disney. Are you hearing that clicking sound?
I am not.
No, there's some weird clicking sound going on. Disney, and you were talking about this with the don't say gay bill, the
It's
straw
not the
man
don't
argument.
say gay bill.
Yeah. So they've created a straw man in order to, for whatever reason, that for them to take place into the woke industrial complex.
Yeah, I'll say if you ever hear of a bill being passed, especially at the state level, look it up and read it yourself. Most legislation at the state level is like a maximum of about 5 to 10 pages. It's very, very readable. If you talk
Mhm.
about things in Congress like the Care Act or other ridiculousness, I mean, those will be hundreds of pages. But most stuff like this, so I went and I looked up HR 1557 on the Florida House website, and I read through it. And it's very clear. It just says you can't teach sex ed to kindergartners to third grade,
Right.
because believe it or not, there was more than one story of them literally with like dolls and graphics to young children telling them how sex happens. And yes, talking about homosexual sex at that age. I don't care what's heterosexual or homosexual. Like, you don't need to be talking about it between your kindergarten and third graders. And if that conversation needs to happen, it should happen by the parents. And that's all this bill does, is put it back in the control of the parents, to be able to have a say in things. And it's very clear in it.
Yeah, and then this straw man argument that they're making, we were talking about it very briefly before we went on, and this is something where I guess over time you start to kind of come to a realization of what this is all about. And I was mentioning to you before that I taken a class at Harvard that was called Corporate Sustainability Strategy, and the corporate sustainability strategy was an environmental course, and I was naive when I first. God, there is some clicking sound, dude. You don't hear that?
Probably means it's me somehow.
Okay, okay. I thought maybe there was something that was in the. Okay. So anyway, the course was about named corporate sustainability, and I thought, well, how to sustain a corporation, essentially how to maintain sustainability within the corporation. That's not really what it was about. What it was about was, um, how do we appease environmentalists when it comes to the environment? And the example I had told you about before was a beer company, and a beer company takes at least 2 cans worth of water in order to make 1 can of beer. And this particular beer company was located it's an actual company in Colorado, using water from a stream, or I can't remember exactly where it was. Environmentalists were, not happy about the fact that this beer manufacturing company was taking drinking water from a stream and using it to manufacture their beer. And their deal was, well, what are you going to do in order to make up for that? So the idea was, okay, well, we're going to recycle more. We're going to use the water again and over again, whatever it is. And that's what, the whole idea of the corporate sustainability kind of mantra or whatever you want to call it was in order to appease environmentalists and appease people that were complaining about, you know, whatever it is a company was doing. Well, this woke industrial complex is a new version of that. And so when it comes to Disney, the whole idea of the don't say gay bill is their way of getting involved in something in order for them to say, hey, don't pay attention of all the things that we're doing. Pay attention to all of this woke stuff. It's a smokescreen, essentially. It's a smokescreen to take your attention off of everything that a corporation is doing that people may look down upon them as a result of. And one of those things is their dealings with China. Um, and you and I talked a little bit about that, related to Mulan, the movie that they filmed in an area of China where it's known that they have concentration camps for Uyghurs. And so, they've taken a lot of heat for that in the media. And what's ended up happening is that along with that and other issues related to Disney making movies in China and the heat that they've taken, this is a smokescreen to say, hey, look at this other shiny object. Don't pay attention to all the things that we're doing. And so in a lot of cases, Disney's been getting away with this for a long time. And then the other thing too is that they're also, have you seen the trailer for, what's that new movie, the Maverick movie, Top Gun?
No, I haven't.
So the Top Gun movie with Tom Cruise, he was in, he had a uniform and had a Taiwanese flag on it. Well, I guess there was some sort of Chinese money involved or whatever it was, and they made him remove or made the whoever it was, the powers that be, remove the Taiwanese flag because of all the situation and stuff that's going on between China and Taiwan. So again, I think Disney's ties with China these are the things that because Hollywood, as far as I'm concerned, is not really making that much money in the United States like it used to. So I think they're by going to China, and the NBA has been doing the same thing, that dealing with that country has drawn criticism. And in order for them to kind of get away with it, this corporate wokeism or the woke industrial complex is a way for them to divert the attention.
That makes a lot of sense. I know that after their choice, and they also, in their press release about this, they also specifically stated that they were going to become more politically active. So we're going to see a lot more movement on Disney on the politics side of things, in order to try to influence legislation, which is not something historically that they've taken a strong stance on. So I know that in the past, at my family, we've gotten seasons passes at Disney before, but we'll think twice about that before doing anything like it again.
Yeah.
If they're going to dig their trenches in on the wrong issues.
Well, I guess, Disney's kind of taking it farther and more mainstream, and I don't understand why. Because even shareholders now are starting to speak up and say, look, you need to worry about running a company and not worry about social justice kind of stuff. It's not the job of a company, at least in my opinion.
Yeah,
if I'm a shareholder of a company, to be dealing in that, run the company.
At the end of the day, I think they found that there's been a lot of backlash in this stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, Target said they were going to have, transgender bathrooms at some point in time, And there was
Yeah.
a large enough boycott of Target that they actually reversed that decision. Netflix, when they made a big ordeal about the anti-abortion bill, the heartbeat bill that passed in Georgia, and said they're going to pull out of Georgia, it was actually the first month that they lost subscribers, and it was a considerable dent. I mean, I know we dropped our Netflix, subscription then. There's this idea inside the mainstream media and on the left that everybody believes these beliefs, but the reality is there's a silent majority, and if you speak loud enough on these topics that don't make any sense, the silent majority starts to act, and when they do, corporations go, "Oops, that wasn't a good business decision."
Yeah, but it seems like every time they do it, there ends up being backlash, and they have to reverse it almost every single time. And that's why I guess what I don't understand is how they haven't learned. You know, hey, this kind maybe companies are in the revenue business. Their job is to generate revenue for their shareholders, and essentially make money. That's their job. Um,
Yeah, but you
although,
got to understand. I mean, while they're the big proponents of conservatives being closed-minded, at the end of the day, you take your average conservative and you explain the leftist viewpoint. Most understand it. They disagree with it, but they understand it, and they even sometimes can understand how someone could think it. Not all of it, but some of it. You do
mhm,
the same thing on the left. They can't comprehend it. They
yeah.
don't understand how anyone can think any differently than them. They're so thinking in a box. They're so closed-minded that it's not surprising they keep making the same mistake over and over again because they can't think any differently. And that's not to say there aren't individuals that can, but when you start looking at the masses, and it's been my experience, you see that. So
Yeah, I guess. And then you see some of these, well, in a lot of these companies, you see employees that have some sort of a agenda when it comes to social justice, and they expect those within those companies to take up those social justice um, things. And again, to me, if you're an employee and you have some sort of social justice thing you want, that's do it on your own time. It's not the company's responsibility to take that on. Um, and there's a book that I've been reading, and this guy had a uh, pharmaceutical company, and he had new employees who were essentially giving him all kinds of grief, saying, you need to be talking about this social justice thing or that social justice thing, and it ended up forcing him out of the company because it got so out of control that the employees in a way kind of forced him out of the company. He was the one who founded it. He was the CEO, but the board of directors came in and said, "Well, why? These employees are saying you need to be, doing this, that, and the other thing, and you're not. Why? Why aren't you doing it?" And he ended up having to step down, which I thought was just bizarre over social justice stuff.
I
And
mean, it's bizarre, but it makes sense. I mean, I don't know if I agree with you 100% on this because, so for as example, when I was running Cyber Ninjas, we were part of a group called C12, which is a Christian CEO group, and they believe in business as a ministry. And the idea is you run your business in a way that honors Christ, so that you can try to minister those around you. Now, it's not about controlling their thought process. It's not about making them think or act a certain way, but you are using your business in a manner to have a greater impact. And so I agree and I believe in that. And like, while mostly like we would choose to support general Christian causes out there, nothing that was like trying to be politically active, I wouldn't cross that off. But the problem becomes into when you have, I mean, that's a closely held company. And so when you have a publicly traded company, as an example with Disney, now you have thousands upon thousands of shareholders. And how can you reflect their viewpoint? It gets more difficult in that, and how that you can stay true to it. So it gets an interesting topic.
well, that's kind of why I think staying out of it entirely is the best interest of a company, to not get involved in any of that kind of stuff. And it's, look, we're here to make a widget. That's what we do. That's what we're experts in. Um, you know, we don't take a side when it comes to religious things or any sort of activism or any of that kind of stuff. We're here to essentially make the widgets that we make. We've always been doing it for years, and now all of a sudden somebody comes in and says we have to think a certain way or act a certain way. To me, I don't think that that's ever good for a company, because if you take a particular side or you promote a certain social justice thing, you're ultimately going to end up pissing somebody off on the other side that doesn't necessarily believe that or doesn't think that that's your place as a company to be talking about those things.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a balance in that. I mean, the balance comes when you start requiring your employees and you start requiring your customers to have a certain belief point. I mean, at
Mhm.
the end of the day, you know, I my life is to try to serve and to honor Christ, and I can't separate what I do in the workplace from that. And so, if I'm running a company, I want something that honors God in the way I'm doing things. So, by all means, I want to have the best whatever I'm doing. So Cyber Ninja's application security company. I want to be deliver the best services, be known for honesty, integrity, do it with excellence and do it well. And we're going to produce that, but we're going to do it in a manner way that honors God. And I've got an opportunity to talk about Jesus. I'm going to. And so you could say that, that has political implications. If I've got an opportunity to support um, in order to be pro life causes that are out there or be active in some manner, like I would have done that with my company, and I don't think that's necessarily wrong. And so, like, where is a line in the sand in this?
You bring
I
up an
mean,
extra. Let me ask you this. So let's just say you're a CEO of a publicly traded company, and you said, if it comes to religious kind of activities, I would use the company to promote that. Um, why not just do that personally? Because that's what you believe, as opposed to doing it as representing the company, which is a publicly traded company. No one's saying you can't do it, obviously, but as if you're, and I'm not just talking from a religious thing, but let's just say, I don't know.
yeah, but that's
Um,
that's our that's our breadbasket. We got to look at it, as a way from a conservatives. Like, if we want to protect our businesses to run from a religious standpoint, then we've got to, support the freedom of companies to make similar statements and things that we don't agree in. So it's easy, like talking about religious liberty here in a company standpoint, and I think it gets questionable when you're publicly traded,
mhm,
because you like at the end of the day, a company doing something that honors what the ownership believes in makes sense. It's not just about who's running the company, it's also about who owns the company. And so once you're publicly traded, how can you accurately know, and do you have that diversity? I mean, do you only have Christians who invest in your company, in which case, maybe it makes sense, but most publicly traded, it's not that way.
right.
Especially they're in mutual funds, they can be way separated. They don't even know what the people who own them believe. And so it gets more questionable to take hard stances on things, which is a good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah. All right. World Economic Forum. So, this is the thing. It's kind of getting a little bit more popularity. More people are talking about it, and they're becoming even more out in the open, related to their agenda. And I was when I'm, before we went on air, I was telling you about um, how many members they have. It's got to be close to 1,000, maybe even over. Um, and I just made a list of some of the companies that are pretty well known. I was kind of this is actually an organization, the AARP, the American Association of American Retired People.
They're a
Apple,
member.
they're
Interesting.
they're a member, yeah, which I thought was really kind of crazy. AARP being a member, but then you have your usual suspects: Apple, AIG, which I can't stand, because they're in the insurance space.
Yeah, you know them well.
Yeah, and Adobe, and of course BlackRock. Um, hold on one second.
Let me guess, Nike.
I didn't see Nike.
Oh, interesting.
Um, Boeing, Bloomberg, Coca-Cola, Google, of course, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, many other financial institutions, too many to name. So all the big ones. LinkedIn, Microsoft, New York Times, which I thought was kind of strange, being a newspaper, journalism outlet, being involved in that. NBC, not a huge surprise, but PayPal, Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, and I think there were a couple other pharmaceutical manufacturers as well in there. State Street, which is one of the three with BlackRock and Vanguard. Uber, Unilever, UPS, Verizon, Visa, and MasterCard. Walmart, Williams Sonoma, Yahoo, Zoom, and list goes on and on and on. There's way too many to mention. But this is what I was telling you before. It's these World Economic Forum, as you can see in this graphic. This is the one I think they were talking about. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. I think they've removed it since then from the website when it took a lot of heat. But this one particular guy, Klaus Schwab, has all of this power and has met virtually all of these world leaders, all of these business leaders, and not many people know about who he is or what the World Economic Forum is. But there have been they have an enormous amount of control over people and companies and governments. And at first I kind of thought, well, maybe they're more of like a lobbying group. But then I started thinking more about it. So they're more like a public relations firm. In a sense that they kind of do what, the smoke screen thing that I was telling you about before, where they kind of say, hey, these companies, we're all about sustainability. We're all about equality. We're all about all these wonderful things. But meanwhile, these same companies are doing all these terrible things to make money. And the other big thing that they're involved in is, this digital ID thing and, controlling your carbon.
If you want to control someone, you need a digital ID because you need to be able to track them uniquely.
Right. So, these are people who, corporations, governments. Klaus Schwab was even bragging about Justin Trudeau, how not only Justin Trudeau was a student of his, but also a lot of his cabinet. And then you see how Justin Trudeau treats his own citizens. And then you look at that, and then if Klaus Schwab is saying that's my guy, that's my man,
and
right
claiming
there.
him, and you only claim someone who's executing what it is you believe in. You otherwise, it may be a follower, but you don't want to mention and claim him.
Yeah. So, that in and of itself. Ardern, or whatever, the Prime Minister of New Zealand is another one. And so, yeah, they're, he's essentially saying, yeah, those are my people. Those are my pupils. Those are the people that, I've taught. And, they have a huge group in my, in their cabinet. And it's pretty scary because moving on to that, not just the digital ID, which is what essentially Trudeau had put into place. And that's why the Ottawa protests were taking place. As we talked about that last time, how many of these truckers had to show a digital ID in order to be able to cross the border to deliver goods to do their work. But that was going to be something that was not just about the digital ID for COVID, but for a vaccine passport, but essentially where they're going with the carbon footprint. If you're traveling too much, you're buying um, buying things that might add too much to the environment. Blah blah blah, whatever it may be. Um, that's going to hurt your overall social credit score. That was the other thing that we were talking about.
Yeah.
And so, again, it's about control. It's about telling people where to go, what to buy, what to do, what kind of car you can get. Um, and again, you think like, oh, it's just this sinister stuff. It's just about control. It's always about money. It always boils down to these companies and these people trying to have control so they can make more money. But the other thing that they've been talking about recently, I don't know if you saw the World Government Summit in Dubai. This is sort of an offshoot of the World Economic Forum, and this went on last week. The and you probably have a lot to say about this. Is the digital currency, CBDC?
Yeah, I mean, I think digital currency is the future, and they're trying to
Mm-hmm.
set it up to be something they can control. Because the way Bitcoin runs, as an example, it's not easily controlled because it's distributed.
Right.
So you need something that maybe builds on the similar technology, but allows a lot more granular control. Again, to tie into the social credit score and the digital ID, it'd all be uniquely tied back to a person. That's why the IRS wanted to know every transaction down to $400 that you did.
Yeah.
Again, it's about control, and again about building that profile about you.
Yeah. Well, I found it interesting because there was individual who was up on the stage or whatever, and name was Pippa Malmgren. Her father was an advisor to Richard Nixon. Um, right at the time they came off the gold standard, and we all know how that turned out
Yeah,
for us when
one of the worst decisions we made in
ever
this
made.
country. Yeah.
And this is precisely why you can't trust any of these people, because she went right into the central bank digital currency. Central bank digital currency is not Bitcoin. It's not decentralized. So they but they seem to talk about it as if it's the same thing. And going to what you just said before, it's not. The whole point of the digital currency, a good digital currency, is to be decentralized. So the government can't control how you spend it or what you do with it.
Yeah.
And, you know, so they're talking about how wonderful it's going to be. Everything's going to go to this digital currency that they're going to have complete control of. And again, you don't purchase the things that they want you to purchase, or if your social credit score goes down, they at that point can then control, what you can and can't do with your money. And a perfect example of that is what happened in Canada.
Hmm.
People's bank accounts were shut down. So I really hope that, and again, people just aren't really paying attention to what's going on with this stuff. And it is super easy, to use your phone for everything. And, when you hear digital currency, oh, that's going to be way easier. I don't have to carry cash around. But I don't think these
Who
people
carries
really,
cash anyway?
yeah. Well, I just think that people need to be careful and understand the difference between a centralized and a decentralized digital currency. And this is for a different day. It's not looking good for the dollar right now.
No.
Um,
No, if it stops being used for oil transactions, which seems highly likely with what's going on,
mhm,
that's going to tank the value of our dollar, especially with all the printing money like nothing else. The
yeah,
combination of the two, um, very significant effects. Yeah.
yeah. So, um, all right. So I'll move on to a couple more things, and we'll call it a night. But the Biden emails were finally
Wait,
people
those were
act
real?
they actually turned out to be real.
Of course they were real. They could tell they were real from the beginning. They just would have impacted the election. And where's the people yelling and screaming? You all these intelligence officers going on the record saying that they purposely made sure the laptop didn't come out because they knew it would influence the election.
I
Where
can't
is the
believe I cannot
outrage?
believe that. I cannot
I mean,
believe that.
there's like there's groups of us that worked together and said, "Hey, let's investigate what went on because something wasn't right here." And all the articles are it was a planned coup of the government, which was not it. We said, "Hey, let's make sure that there's an investigation and whatever happened happened. It's great." But that's out there as some giant coup. And now we've got an actual people saying we hid information. We're government employees and we hid information to influence an election. And what's happened? Nothing.
Nothing. Yeah, and even the New York Post had I love their covers because they do such a good job with it. But they had the spies who lie, and it had all the list of all the spies that you were talking about that essentially said, "Oh, it was all Russian disinformation." Um, yeah, it's
Yeah, I
oh
think that
man,
we're quickly becoming where the United States is one of the biggest sources of disinformation.
yeah, there, no
It
doubt
used to
about
be
it.
something that Russia was the best at, but we may be getting better at it. I don't know.
Well, here's another one. So I don't know if you heard this story or not, but
Yeah.
um, there was apparently a 7-hour gap in phone records or phone call logs. Turned out it was all BS, completely made up. And even CNN, of course, they're not going to come out and say, "Hey, we got it wrong."
Yeah.
But look at all the people here on Twitter. Of course, it's Twitter slamming. I don't even know why it's even something to be talked about. It's amazing how Trump is still in the news, even though he's not president anymore. It's absolutely remarkable how many people are obsessed with talking about him all the time.
Well, politicians are great at harnessing hate, and
Hmm.
people hate Trump, so they're going to make sure that he stays in the news as long as possible so they can harness it for whatever they want to do.
Yeah, but yeah, CNN. The mystery of the 7-hour gap has fueled furious speculation on why calls are missing. That includes allegations that Trump was using a burner phone or that the logs were purposely suppressed. But the gap might have a less mysterious explanation. That's their word saying, "Yeah, we got it all." Nah, there was, never happened.
We didn't bother to look to compare it against other days to see if
Yeah.
there's any reasons for gaps. We just went out there and said, "This is a great story. That's a narrative we want to push forward. Let's
Yep.
say that he deleted stuff."
Yep. So, according to multiple sources, Trump's phone behavior and the White House switchboard records, the January 6th log reflects Trump's typical phone habits. He mainly plays calls through the switchboard when he was in the residence, but rarely used it when he's in the Oval Office. The fact that the log does not show calls on January 6th from the Oval Office is not unusual, said the sources, because Trump typically had staff either place calls directly for him. Isn't that what all presidents do? Or on landlines or cell phones. Those calls would not be noted on the switchboard log. So another lie about Trump found out. And then finally I'll end on this great meme. So we were hearing about this all week. When
But
buying a
this is
60,
this is all part of the plan. Okay,
no,
we drive up oil costs. We put electric facilities because the Build Back Better plan put electric charging stations in low income neighborhoods. And then after we put them in low income neighborhoods, we go, oh, well, they can't afford them. So now you need government help to purchase your things. It's all part of the you will own nothing and you'll be happy. So we'll
right.
start by giving it to people because they have to have an electric vehicle.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all subsidized. I mean, it's subsidized now. All this clean energy, solar, everything is government subsidized. And it's not about clean energy. It's about who can get rich from manufacturing these cars, these types of vehicles. Um, and it's really going from really one trash sort of energy to another. And I guess I'm going to have to figure out the sound here, but Peter Ducey had asked the outgoing Jen Psaki, um, does Biden own an electric car? And she wouldn't answer it. And of course,
Of
there's
course
this
not.
there's this thing about him driving with Jay Leno. I have photos of it on Jay Leno's garage where he's, rolling around in an old Corvette. And, DC's point was, well, they're going to, Biden's going to keep telling everybody he's got to, here's a fix for an immediate problem that we have right now. And it's go out and buy a $55,000 or $90,000 electric car now. Like, that's not going to fix the problem now.
Yeah.
But his point was, does he even have one? She, of course he doesn't. So she couldn't answer.
And so her answer: presidents don't drive themselves.
That's right. Right. But yet here he is doing it right now. And obviously he owns cars. He owns vintage cars. So those are okay. But the rest of us, we can't do that. So again, this is not about clean energy or any of that. It's about who's going to get rich from it. And even Wired magazine was talking about this back in 2019, the devastating environmental impact of technological progress. And you should see these mines that they dig in order to get these precious or rare earth metals and lithium and all these things to make these batteries. These batteries don't last forever.
No, there's literally, I think we talked about this last time. In France, there's literally an EV graveyard because at a certain point, it's not worth the money to replace the battery unless battery prices go down. And with all the demands on what's required to build batteries, it seems unlikely it's going to go down soon unless the technology changes significantly.
Yeah. So again, and being the year that we're in, you would think that we would have a better technology that we could use other than batteries, but I guess not. But anyway, that's what's going on. Anything else to add, Doug?
Nothing comes to mind.
I forgot to ask last time. Tell everybody your Telegram.
So I am the real Doug Logan on Telegram because, believe it or not, there's actually a fake Doug Logan account out there.
You were that famous that somebody created a fake account. Wow.
I guess I should be honored.
You should be honored. You should definitely be honored at that. Congratulations. All right. Well, we will see everybody next week. We'll have to figure out the time, but in all likelihood, next Sunday. Take it easy, everybody.
Sounds good. See you later.